everyone, welcome to September's bullet journal. That's right, the summer, it went really fast. And I can't believe the kids are back to school next week. I am not prepared, but what is prepared is my bullet journal. So let's have a look at where we are for September. This is September's theme. So we're gonna use some paints. I've used a mixture of watercolors and a little bit of acrylics, but you can use pens, pencils, whatever you want. And September we're going for a woodland forest theme, a little bit inspired by my forest walk last week. I didn't get to the mountains in August as I wanted to. It got rained off, stormy weathers, so I'm hopeful that September I'll see hopefully some mountains and a lot more greenery and forests. It's still quite green here. I feel like autumn doesn't really kick in till much later now, so I definitely wanted to keep things a little bit green. I didn't want to go full on autumnal. So let's look at what we've got for September. I'm going to highlight some pens that you can use. These are the Tombows that I'll be mixing in with my bullet journal theme, but I mainly used my watercolor paints. I will link these in the comments in the description. This is my faithful watercolor set. It has lasted me so long. I do need to actually replenish a couple of the pans, but it's a really good quality one. I will link it. I got mine on Amazon, but I'm sure you can get lots of others from other places. Let's have a look. So I'm using a mixture of Tombows. I'll be using these mainly for the rest of the spreads, so on my dailies and my weeklies. Obviously paintbrushes and a varying size. I've got my boring old ramekin dish that I use as a mixing palette, and the same for some water. On top of that, I will always be using my monthly stamp set and my ink pad, which now are online, so if you want to purchase them you can head over to the store. So here's our template for this month. We've got a woodland mountain scene, and as always I've given you a blank on the other side if you wish to use that. Our weekly, little bit of watercolour title detail, but then you've got your forest line underneath there. And then your dailies, we've just got a little nod to our forest every day. So just a little bit of mindful painting, colouring in every day if you wish, or not. You can just keep that blank and just get your thoughts down on paper. Habit tracker with our line of forest trees, and our mood tracker looks a bit crazy, but I think it'll look really good coloured in. So choose a colour. I usually go for 3 different colours, meaning great, okay, and not so good. And then each tree has a day for September. Fill that in as per your mood for the day and see what kind of forest scene you build up. Hopefully there's lots of good colours and not so many of the other colours. So let's look at the techniques we'll be using. I'm going to show you these using just the Tombow pens for now. Let me get my notebook out. Okay, so here's our blank page. Let me zoom in for you. If you've done any of our kind of watercolor tutorials before, we may have done the little technique that I use for trees. Like I say, I'm going to just show it using the brush tip of our Tombow pen just for speed. We are going to just start with a faint line. That just gives us an idea. That's our trunk of our tree, and I start at the top just dotting and kind of increase that as we work down, spilling it out around, just dabbing. And you would do this exactly the same with a paintbrush as you would. You can get a bit messy if you want. It just gives a nod to the trees, and you build it out as you come down, either dotting. You could use a bigger paintbrush, might get it done a bit faster, and building it as you come down. We can make the bottom, oops, missing you off the bottom, make the bottom look a bit messy. That's really all you want to do. See? And it gives you that faint outline. Doesn't need to be neat, doesn't need to be tidy. You can go over it if you want, add a couple of bit of patches of shading just to give it a bit more detail. And that's really all I'm doing. So there's a variation of that. Say I haven't got a brown, let me use this colour. I haven't really got a brown to hand. But say if we're using this as the tree trunk, you can kind of like have a bare one with some kind of branches coming out like that. So you could do that to start with if you wanted. Mixture of all different types of trees and just build it up to kind of almost, you know, build your forest up. You could leave some bare. You could also have some which maybe had a bit more at the top. So we could go over where those branches are and imagine that we've got some leaves rather, on there, and just kind of build that up. Maybe there's a couple more as we go down, but as we get a bit further down, that goes to nothing. So there's another kind of idea. So you could have a naked branch, you could have a half-filled one. The other kind of tree that I've done, we're going to start with the trunk. Again, using the tombos, you can see how easy it is to use the brush pen on the tombos, or you could use a watercolour and a paintbrush. This one is going to be a little bit more kind of, I don't know, poofy. It's not really a word, is it? A little bit more round, I guess, is that. So you can imagine if you were using watercolour pens, that would blur really nicely. Watercolour brush, you could add water onto your tombos as well, just to give a bit of a detail like that. And then we can fill in with our brown, just kind of where you would imagine some branches going out into these clusters of leaves. Maybe it's coming from underneath, and then maybe at the bottom there's a couple of twiggy bits coming out. That's really all I've used. I'm just going to double check against the sheet and see if there's anything else I've missed. No, that's pretty much it. Those are our tree shapes. I've done a little bit, obviously the mountains, I mean, really straightforward, especially if you've got like a wider brush pen. Your mountains, I'm just doing this, and you can add shade or you can not, it's up to you. Let me zoom in and see that. So this is a really light coloured tombow, or, you know, just to give a faint detail in the background. It's quite far in the background, so it's quite faded. Our mountain scenes in the back. And if you wanted to add a little birdie detail, we can just have, you know, a little kind of flying amongst there with our little V's. That's really it. The only other thing I've got is kind of grass at the bottom, where purely colour in that bottom bit, and then just with the brush just pulling some blades of grass. So those are the techniques that we're using, and really it's just about building our scene up. So there'll be lots of stopping and starting where we're doing the background mountains and then letting it dry and then bringing some more colours, and I'll talk you through the layering as we go. So let's have a look and get started with the template. So here's our template, and if you're a regular here, you'll know that I like to trace through just an idea, just to give me a bit of balance. I'm going to trace through my title and just an idea of where everything's going. So faint that you can't even see it, so I just rub some pencil on the back and then pop that over the front and trace it on too. So faint you can hardly see, but I've just got an idea of where my mountains are going, and where, like a stem for almost like each tree, just so I know where I want to put things when I start putting my colour on. So let's go in with colour. So first of all, I want a kind of light grey, so it's very difficult to see because I've messed all my paints, but I believe this is black. So I'm going to get a bit of black on my brush, and this is my little ramekin mixing palette. I don't have white watercolour left, so I'm just mixing a little bit of acrylic white that I've got, just to make it a little bit lighter. Adding water in, so it's really quite a faint grey That's what I want. I want it to be in the background, so a light grey. If you're not sure on your colour, you can always just test it out on a bit of paper. There we go, that's quite a nice grey. I'm happy with that. So then I'm going to go in and just pop my kind of background mountains in. Like I say, got a little bit of water. If you're using watercolour paper, that's great. If you're using our bullet journals, it does take watercolour, but you just can't load it too much. So just be careful. I'm literally just pushing that over there, and I'm making it really messy, and I like it messy. Okay, I like it messy. Okay, that's what we're doing. If you want to add in a little bit of shade, you can go over it, especially when it's a bit dry. We can go over it and just add a little bit of mountain details on if you want to make some a little bit darker than the others. That is really all we're doing for our mountains. We do need this to dry before we can go over it, but maybe what we can do in the meantime is pop our greeny bits at the bottom. So we're going to have almost where the forest blurs into the mountain. So I'm going to mix a little bit of green in with my grey, because again, it's quite dark in the background and it's just a bit muted, it's not as fresh. So I'm just going to do this, that's all I'm doing, just to add some kind of green detail into the background. And then we're going to have to leave this bit here to dry. So it's lucky that I have made a cuppa. I'm going to just let this dry off a bit so we can work back into it. And I'll see you when this is dry. Okay, so I've actually dried it a little bit with the hairdryer just to speed things up, which you can, or you can just bide your time, fill it out and come back to it when it's a bit drier. So let's have a look. We're going to start putting in details of our trees. But what we need to do first is add in the trees that are in the background, and they are going to be in a grey again. So I'm just going to use this kind of grey-green that I've mixed already. I'm going to add a little bit more black to it just to make it more grey, because the green is going to come out similar to this, and I want it to be more grey, but then it's just a constant mixing in trial and error, because you don't want it to be too dark, otherwise it's going to jump out too much in front. So that's where I'm at the moment, which might be a little bit too dark, but I think if I water it down, that's going to work just perfect. So you're always just mixing and working from the back to the front of the image. So now we've got that, I'm going to add in some of our trees in the background, and what I'm going to use for that is slightly thinner nib of a paintbrush. If you wanted to use Tombows, you can just use lighter greys and kind of tone them to a darker grey and a brighter green to the front. You can definitely do this in Tombows as well. So where we're going in, it's just kind of like in the background. So we don't want these to be, can I zoom in? Does it need to be a bit closer? You don't want these to be too technical, okay? Because we're going to be painting over the top of them, to be honest. It's just to give you the idea that there's a tree in the background. So these can be as messy as you wish. We're just building the background. It's not going to have any need to be detailed. And we just keep popping these little ones in. These are going to sit behind in the back of the forest and just build up our scenery, really. Give it a little bit of depth. Not massive on, you know, I'm not a huge big watercolour painter at all. I wish I could do more of it. I did. If you're interested in doing this more, we've got the lovely De Winton watercolour company, and she's on Patreon and she does some fabulous tutorials. Highly recommend taking a look if you wanted to kind of increase your skills or just practice. That's all, to be honest, that's all it is with anything creative. It's just practicing. And you know what, the first time I did this this layout, I wasn't happy with it at all, and I did it again, and that's fine. So, you know, just keep trying if you're not happy with it. I always find that I'll do my own journal and then I'll come and repeat it for the tutorial, and I'll prefer the one that I did in the tutorial to the one that's in my actual journal. And that's because it's the second time I've done it, and I've kind of learned what needs to be better and where I can improve. And that kind of goes with everything. Let's zoom out a bit so you can just see it's giving a little bit of shade. I'm just going to put it in between these trees as well. I mean, these trees here are going to actually be fairly detailed, so by the time we're onto that layer, you're not actually going to see any of this. You might just see a nod to it in the back. So that's why you really don't need to go crazy. I mean, look, you can, is that even on? Yeah, it's on. I wasn't sure if it was on camera. You can just go really messy if you wanted to. Just gives you the outline of some trees in the background. I'm going to pop some more in over here, I think. If that's going to be here, that's going to be quite a big one there, and that's going to be, maybe I've got some room for one to be peeping over here, maybe. Just in the background there, somewhere. Because I'm only going to go far down as that because I'm actually going to have quite a big tree here. So if you wanted to go over and add a bit more shading to some of them, you can. It's just trial and error. There's no right or wrong. Absolutely no right or wrong. Your forest can be packed and dense, or it might be, you know, quite sparse. You decide. It can be whatever you want it to be. Okay, I'm going to stop there, and we're going to, oh, actually, let me pop another one. You see, this is the problem. I keep saying, oh, I'll just stop. Oh, no, let me just pop another one in there. I'm going to fill this space up here a bit because it's looking a little bit naked. I've forgotten about this side of the page a bit. Okay, so we're just filling that in there. Okay, so we're going to have to now let this dry and come back and do the next layer. Okay, so we're back. I've dried it with the hairdryer again. As you can see, it's going a little bit crinkled, but that's nothing to worry about because as you're using your journal, that'll be closed and that's going to flatten out. But just to show you how good our bullet journals is, look, absolutely no ghosting. I know the paper has bowed a bit, but that's going to straighten out as we're using our journal, but it's no bleed through. It's such lovely paper, and that's our dotted bullet journal, which are on the website. And if you're a Patreon member, you get discount on that too. So let's have a look at building up our trees. So I'm going to start by just popping in the trunks of the trees because that's going to be in the background. So I'm going to just kind of start with a really light touch. Check that I'm on camera. Yeah, okay. And then kind of just get a bit thicker as we come down to the base, and then we're there. So I'm just using brown and doing these, and then I'll add in some offshoot branches, and then we'll start building from there with the leaves and the other branches. So hopefully you can see it coming together and you're not too afraid. I know as soon as we kind of like delve into watercolour, it's a little bit scary, but you've got to remember as well, the only person who sees your journal is probably just you. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, you guys see my journal, but other than that, nobody would actually pick up my journal and read it. And it's only because I'm showing you how to do things that you'd see it. I would never actually show you my written journal. Although if you're part of Journal Club, where we have our journal prompts, I do kind of a little bit of a verbal journal and tell you about what's been in my journaling or my kind of journal thoughts for the day. So if you're not already part of our Patreon group, that is something that you might want to do, because this will be on YouTube, but as always our YouTube videos are a year behind, so our patrons get all of the brand new layouts. This one is September 2024, so our patron members will have access to this theme, the tutorial video, and all of the worksheets that you saw me go through. You have all of those included in your Patreon membership, £8 a month, as well as 5 journal prompts every week. And on Instagram, if you're part of our journal club, you'll also have a meditation every day where there's a journal prompt. I share a link to a meditation that you can do, always it within mind to what we're journaling about, just to kind of help you get into the mind frame of that. And this week in our journal club, our journal theme is around back to life, just kind of getting over the holiday blues almost, and getting ourselves back in gear, and thinking about how we want our days to go, if there's a better way that we can, you know, manage our time. Is there any kind of routines that we should include, and thinking about things like that. Our journaling's always mindful and ways that we can help ourselves and just generally live a calmer, more balanced life. Sometimes we focus on goal settings, and sometimes we think more about, our mental health. It depends on, the theme of the week. And I'll always share themes on the Patreon group. So every month you get a timetable. I like being organised. You get a timetable, and that just lists out the different topics that we're going to cover for that month. And that's what we do on Journal Club. It's a lovely little space, and you can get as involved, or you can just, do it, pick it up when you can. There's no kind of commitment that you have to put in, unless you want to put it in. If you want to come and chat to me about your journal prompts, if you've got any questions, you can always ask. I'm always around, especially on Instagram, to answer any of your questions. So yeah, if you're not already part of our Patreon group, come and take a look and see what you think. I'm just adding, as you can see, all these, whilst I've got my brown handy, I'm just adding all of these little offshooty cut branches. When I was walking in the forest on Friday, a lot of the trees are well maintained and looked after, so they'd all been kind of chopped down at the base, and all of the empty branches were trimmed down. But you often see these kind of broken branches on the fir trees. That's where I'm at on the oh, I didn't realise half of that was off screen. There we go. That's what I was doing as I was chatting away. Sorry about that, guys. So we've got our trunks and our offshoot branches. So that's me done with the brown. I'm going to mix a green together now and start popping in the leaf details. Okay, so let's start with this tree on the end, and I'll be more mindful of keeping myself on the screen. I'm not a pro at this. So I've got a lighter coloured green, and I'm just going to do our kind of fluffy, cloudy type leaves. So literally just using the brush and the paint, loading it up, and just dabbing it on, and building the tree as we go down. All I'm doing on that. So you don't need to get too technical, it doesn't really matter. Just wherever you kind of see a branch, adding a clump. And if you want to go back in with a darker colour, you can do that, give it a little bit of kind of tone to it, just dotting that around as well. I think because I'm using a white acrylic, that kind of helps a little bit on this, because it's quite opaque and you can kind of work with it. It's also a bit thicker than using watercolour, so it gives it a bit of texture as well. So I think that's a bit of a happy accident, because like I said, I've run out of white watercolour, so I had to use something. So sometimes accidents are happy like that. I like it. So that's all we're doing for this tree. Might have to kind of speed up the video because it might be a little bit too long if I chit chat whilst we're doing this. So I'm gonna fill in, just as we talked on the tutorial, those kind of brush strokes. Maybe I'll do one tree with you. Let's do that now. We'll do one tree together and then I'll speed up for the rest. Let's move this over. So I'm going to concentrate on this tree, and he is going to have a kind of darker green colour. Actually, I changed mine. I'm going to do the one next to it because I'm going to leave this a little bit longer to dry. So this tree next to it, I'm going to go with a bit of a kind of lighter highlight of green and just dotting, just as we did on the tutorial, dotting and getting a little bit kind of bigger as we come down and just dotting that on. I'm going to pop also like a darker shade in with this, so this is almost like just the highlight of the leaves here, so I'm going to add a darker green in there as well, but that builds that one up nicely. We'll get a little bit more dark going on. Quite and the more, especially if you're using watercolor, you can just go less water, more paint, and that's going to make it a little bit more kind of opaque, and it's going to make it jump out a bit more as well. So let's go in and, oh, that's a bit too dark, let's mix a bit more green with that. You can see how messy my mixing palette gets, look. And you know, I probably should invest in a mixing palette because I do a fair bit of painting journal wise, but oh, I don't know, the ramekin does the job, and you know, you get to eat what comes in the ramekin. So I don't know if they still do those goo, I don't know if you remember, those goo chocolate desserts used to come in these ramekins, and that's why I've got them. Yeah, I haven't had any of them for a while. It's just adding in, dotting. As you can see, I've got a smaller brush, and I'm just literally dotting the paint around. And you can do kind of clusters where you've got a branch, and you can go thicker on the paint if you want it to be a little bit more opaque, and if you want it to be more watery, just, you know, water it down, blur it out. You don't need to do exactly as I'm doing. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. So I'm going to let it dry for a bit and start filling in the other trees, which I will speed up because otherwise it's going to be a really long video. Let's see you on the other side. So zoom out, there we go. There is kind of like my scene, and as you could see, I'm kind of building up. If you wanted, you can just pop in a little bit of shading on some of the trees. If you want to add a bit more depth, you can go back in and go over that. I'm just going to add in a little bit of kind of shading around these trees at the bottom, just to give this a little bit more shade around here. And then if you wanted, you can add some of those kind of grassy strokes. I might just use a really skinny paintbrush for that, just to get some really fine strokes, just to give it a bit more detail. It's quite a dry brush as well, so it's kind of pulling a little bit more on that, so it's making them a little bit finer. That's working quite well. It's giving a bit of grass texture, so you can add that in wherever you fancy. Some tufts of grass. blades of grass, I should say, shouldn't we? Adding in a bit of texture, and then I might just shade that kind of around the tree line. Maybe just a little bit over. Can you see that on camera? No. A little bit over here, just to blur that line a little bit to make it look like it's the edge of the grassy land. Oops, that's a bit dark. But not to worry, because we can just use a bit of water and just fan it out into the distance. Like I say, no right or wrong here. Just whatever you fancy. Let's just blur that in a bit more. Make it a bit more murky. Right, I think I'm happy with how that's looking. If you wanted, we can add our little birdies in the distance in the mountains. So I'm going to go back to that grey that I used at the start for the mountains, and let's just do some bird shapes above the mountains. Maybe there's another one flying over here. Just using the paintbrush really, just to pull the paint around. Okay, I am happy with those birdies. And then next, obviously leave that to dry, and we're going to add in our titling. Let me get my black Tombow, and we're going to pop September in the front there. I might just cover that for now, just in case it's still a bit wet. Obviously, you take time to let it dry. Okay, September, we're in, and then I'm going to use my monthly stamp set. As I say, these are back in store on the online shop. September's a little bit of a jaggedy start, so you've got it starting on a Sunday. So on the stamps you'll always have 31, so I just, you know, very messily, because you could do this a lot neater and just wipe it off, but I use my nail to rub off the ink off the 31, and I just pop it in there. You can also just create your own grid and write the numbers in, but I like to keep it all nice and neat and tidy. And there is our September journal cover page, and you use all of these techniques just to kind of, if you want to add them to the daily pages or your weekly pages or your tracker, it's exactly the same techniques as we've gone over here today. I hope you enjoy it and have some mindful painting time, and tag me in anything you get up to, because I love to see it. Have a great month.